Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thank
I understand you're doing something very unusual for a governmental body. You're running a schedule.
you. Occasionally, you bring some pride. Whatever. So, thank you for taking the time to complete the application. It's not easy, it's a big one. But yeah, as you would probably expect, the group, I in particular, am interested to be educated in terms of, given certain of the history as related in the application. Why should you get there on this list at the 6th, and then why should the governor, when he gets his chance, check off the box and say it's Stephen LaRoche?
Okay. Well, as far as the governor goes, I first met Governor DeSantis when he was campaigning for Congress here in Volusia County. I knew he and his wife because I was running for clerk of court at the time. Extremely impressed with his work ethic. His philosophy and my philosophy align exactly. I am so proud whenever I travel anywhere to say that I always say we have the best governor, and unfortunately I believe we're going to lose it because I think that he should be president of the United States. That being said, why should he select me? Because I have the most experience of any candidate that's going to come before you. I have been a county court judge. When I was a county court judge, I volunteered for every single position that I could whenever somebody had the sniffles or went on vacation. I have presided over dependency, circuit civil, circuit criminal. I've done Baker Acts, which are incredibly rare. I will never forget my first time in circuit criminal. I was sitting up there. I sentenced the gentleman to 4 years. He was fine. The state was fine. The victim was fine. And it caught in my throat because of the enormity of the moment. Because being in county court, if you give 30 days, that's a long period of time. Presently, I serve on 2 quasi-judicial boards. One is the Personnel Board for Volusia County. They have the ultimate authority over all county employees. We hear disputes where they have, there are allegations of misconduct. The employee is entitled to appeal, and then we have a trial as to what they've done and what the punishment should be. Sometimes it's a little lighthearted. We had an employee run over a porta potty and then use the bulldozer to hide the evidence. Not the crime of the century. Sometimes it's tragic. We've had police dogs die in the back of cars because police officers didn't take the necessary steps to make sure that they were being maintained. Also, I am the special magistrate for the city of Daytona Beach Shores. I am their first magistrate. They used to have a code enforcement board. They decided that wasn't working, and I had to create the courtroom environment and all of the procedures. I'm doing that again on Thursday. And we have code enforcement violations and marijuana charges, oddly enough, that come before me. And it's my job to determine, of course, whether or not there's a violation and to mete out appropriate penalties. And they can be fairly severe, $250 a day in running. And I've also, because I didn't like the fact that occasionally I would have a couple whose contractor never closed their permit, and they now owe $55,000 on a $13,000 kitchen renovation in fines. I've also created an appeals process that didn't exist before, where they can appeal the running fine and give me reasons why it should be mitigated. So I have more experience than anybody coming before me.
And it goes without saying that there was some additional experience in 2007. How is that supposed to affect or impact this board?
Okay. What occurred 17 years ago, and I'll explain it, and I'll tell you why. My grandfather, who raised me, died. I will never forget that because I was in hospice with him. I left. I had promised Judge Zambrano I would teach a class for him. I knew I'd never see him again. 4 days later, on the way to the funeral, my father-in-law got a ticket because my mother-in-law had terminal breast cancer and was thrown up on the side of the road, and he was late. It was a $35 ticket. My wife asked me to get rid of it, and rather than paying it, I signed the back of it and dismissed it. And I should not have done that. I was absolutely wrong. I admitted that I was wrong. I went through the JQC procedures. During that period of time, I suffered 2 heart attacks due to stress. We decided, my wife and I, that we were not going to continue to fight it. We had an expert witness that said that I was temporarily, well, I don't want to say insane, that's a bad word, but I was not in my normal faculties. But when you wake up in the back of an ambulance and your 5-year-old daughter is crying, thinking you're dead, there's nothing in the world more important than your family. I resigned, and the Florida bar picked up the charges. And I was exonerated. They said I did nothing wrong. I don't believe that. I know I did something wrong. But at the time, like I said, I was not in my right mind. Also, at the time, I was the youngest elected judge in Florida. That was 17 years ago. I am a completely different person. My attitude toward the law, my philosophy toward the law, the running of the courtroom, how cases are handled, are all 17 years and a horrible, bitter experience behind me. But I will tell you one thing. I do have a deep, deep appreciation of this process, because I, not only am I the only person that's going to come before you with judicial experience, but I'm also probably the only person that's going to come before you that's been on this side with people asking them questions and people saying they did something wrong. So I have a very thorough understanding of the process. And you can guarantee that I will never, ever come close to a line like that again.
We received a letter the first time you applied from the JQC. I just want to read a little bit of it to you unless you respond a little bit.
Can I ask when this was?
2017.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It says, the commission is in receipt of your request, and this was written to Mr. Chris Green, who was chair at the time.
Okay.
So it says, the commission is in receipt of your request for information regarding past or pending matters before the commission involving a former judge, Mr. Stephen deLaroche. Please be advised that in October of 2006, the investigative panel of the commission found probable cause to support filing formal charges alleging that while serving as a Volusia County judge, Mr. deLaroche unlawfully dismissed no less than 4 traffic tickets for family members, friends, and relatives of former clients. It goes on to further state, the investigative panel also found probable cause to support charging Mr. deLaroche with making false statements under oath to the investigative panel. Mr. deLaroche filed an answer to the charges admitting he violated the Code of Judicial Conduct in only one instance by dismissing a ticket for his father-in-law. However, before a final hearing could commence, Mr. deLaroche decided to resign from office. Since removal from office is the most serious sanction the Commission could recommend to the Supreme Court, the Commission elected to voluntarily dismiss the charges. It then cites the investigation. It then goes on to say, please be advised, the Commission voluntarily dismissed the prior proceeding. The Commission may at any time consider acts of may at any time consider acts of misconduct which reflect adversely upon the general character and fitness of a judicial officer, and it cites it. Kelly cited 238 Southern 2nd, 565, Florida Supreme Court, 1970. Thus, res judicata and double jeopardy do not apply. So we've received communication from the JQC indicating that that matter is not closed in their view, and that it could recommence. So that, I want you to address that, and then more specifically, where it says that you were charged with making false statements under oath. Do you deny that charge?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sorry, your first part of your question was?
Really, obviously this comes up in our deliberation, and so I
I'm
want
sure
to
it
give you an
does.
opportunity to fully vet this out. The first part of the question is, they are saying that this matter is not closed. There is no res judicata and double jeopardy. While they're not saying they will institute a JQC action should you be reappointed or appointed, they're not closing that door. And so what is your response to that?
I understand. First of all, I've never seen that letter before, so I'm a little surprised by it. Second, I have spoken to the JQC a number of times regarding this matter since leaving. I guess your question is, why should you stick your neck out and recommend me when that thing's in my file,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain why. Because I am really, really good at this. If you look at my statistics, I ran the most efficient courtroom in the state of Florida. I had handled the most amount of files. I had the least amount of probation violations because I take people under consideration. I look at them and I decide what they need to fix their problems so that I never see them again. And I know a lot of people say that, but I haven't actually done that. I've sentenced people to learn how to read. I've sentenced people to parenting classes. When I was chief administrative county judge, I completely revamped the system. It had been sitting there for years and no one had ever changed it. I looked at all the statistics. I had my two oldest judges in the land that had 7,000 more cases than the domestic violence judge did in Volusia County. I rearranged all the borders so that everybody had an equal caseload, and that took out all of the backlog of the cases. Now that may not be the greatest thing that's ever happened, but certainly it made the court system run much, much better. I know that I made a mistake in 2006. There is no doubt that that follows me around. And I am ashamed and embarrassed of what I did. And while I have an excuse, it is still no excuse. But I still want to serve the people of the state of Florida. I am more than capable of executing this position. I have experience both as a judge, as a family law mediator, and the family law courts and dependency courts are some of the most difficult places there are. There often are no good solutions. And it takes a lot of courage and thought and insight to pick the least worst solution. When you have two parents that are alcoholics or drug-addled and the rest of the family doesn't have an interest in the children, and you look at those children and you've got to figure out what in the world can you do to try to save them so that they grow up to be responsible adults and not dependent on the system. That takes a lot of experience. I've been practicing law for 33 years. I started that young. And like I said, I was the youngest elected judge in the state of Florida. I am absolutely passionate about this. A lot of people apply for this job because they think it's easy, which it's not. Or they apply for this job because it pays money, which of course all jobs in America do. I'm not. I don't need this money. I don't even need to work. I want this job because I am very passionate about serving the people of the state of Florida, and I think I can really do an excellent job or performance for them. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Taking the time.
And if my voice is weak, I got a cold over the weekend, so
Get better.
thanks, bye.